Zev.
Okay, so I'm going to get us started in a moment with the sponsors, and then we'll do the Gemara. Okay, all right. Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg. In memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Ruvain ben Labush, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara, Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann, in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avromeir ben Shimon, Shal Shur, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva. Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel ben Harav Shimon. A Month of Learning by Charlie Gelfenstein, in memory of his mother, Dacia Gilbas Meir Halevi, and his father, Meir ben Yaakov. By Gila and Harold Saltzman, in memory of her mother, Eti bat Yitzchak Elchanan. By Chaim and Phyllis Reese, in memory of his father, Mordechai ben Yom Tov Lipa, and Phyllis and Chaim Reese, in memory of her father, Pinchas ben Avraham. Week of Learning sponsored by the Friends of Pauline and Gerald Feldman, in memory of their friend Gerald Feldman, Tzvi Hirsch ben Menachem Mendel. Starting today, a week of learning by Lala and Siggy Bessler, in memory of her father, Mordechai ben Yisrael Yitzchak. Also today, we have a day of learning sponsored by Bella Dolinsky, in memory of her husband, Yehuda Menashe ben Yeshaya Yitzchak HaKohen. We have for Shabbat, okay, a number of days of learning by Judy and Keith Zauder, in memory of their friend, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel ben Harav Shimon, their friend Andrew Burian, Moshe ben Mordechai, and Corinne Greenwald's brother, Dr. Stanley Cantor, Shmaya ben Mordechai, and their friend Annalie Chigger, Chanalea bat Moshe. We also have Bonnie Geller Geld and Isaac Geld, in memory of their friend, Rabbi Henry Dicker, Elchanan Yisrael ben Mordechai Leib Halevi, and their friend Andrew Burian, Moshe ben Mordechai. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velta Yeshiva Shem Atzliah, and L'chol B'nai Israel a good Gaben Shtiyar. Also, I'll just add one other positive example, a day of learning on Shabbos by Bonnie Geller Geld and Isaac Geld in honor of Irv Fishbein's 98th birthday. Okay. All right. Having shared that, all right, morning, everybody. We are on, I believe, 103, right? Okay. Just going to quickly point out from the Mishnah on the bottom of Kaf Bet Amud Beis 102b, we talked about the issue of strings attached to a musical instrument used by Levi'im in the Beit HaMikdash, as to whether or not they could be repaired, tied with a knot, or whether it only had to be with regards to a bow, right? And the Gemara there, after the Mishnah, okay, brought an example that cited a Braita that said that it could not be tied, it could be made with a bow. Okay.
4 days. So
and that one was the view of the rabbis, one of Rabbi Eliezer, right?
Yeah.
Why? Because Rabbi Eliezer held that machshirei mitzvah dochina to Shabbat. Okay. Okay. And then we saw later that it said the machloket of Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis.
And I will
Right?
speak to
Rabbi
you
Yehuda
about
aliba deman, asked the Gemara. And then on to the top of Kaf Gimel, today's daf. Right? Rabbi Eliezer. Is it according to Rabbi Eliezer? Kama afilu lechatchila nami.
Okay, bye. Look, everyone.
Initially,
Bye-bye.
if somebody
Thanks.
could
Bye-bye. No.
mute, please. Okay. Ela lo kasha. All right. Not even initially. Ha Rabbi Shimon, ha Rabbanan. The Tanya ben Levi shenifsaka lo nima bekinor. Again, with this Braita that if a string broke, okay, koshra, right? According to one view, the Braita says one could tie it. Rabbi Shimon Omer onva. Rabbi Shimon says one could tie it with a bow. And now we get to the new material where we left off yesterday with another example, a third view, a third perspective. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, af hi eina mishmat et hakol. Okay? The problem, he says, is that when you only tie it with a bow, it's not going to have its proper sound. Okay? Ela mishal shel milmata, v'korech milmala. But rather what you do is you unwind the string, okay, from the bottom, and you wrap it back around on the top, okay? Or mishal shel milamala, or you unwind it from the top and you pull it down and rewind it at the bottom, okay? So in the example, as I said, Art Scroll does not have a picture here, but in the example that I showed you here, okay, if you look closely, you can see there are knobs here and knobs down here, okay, and that's what it means by saying the idea of being able to unwind and pull, okay, and rewind it. All right. So the Gemara continues, though, and tries to suggest another possible answer. Okay, another way of resolving the contradiction between the Mishnah and the Braita. V'bayat ema. And if you want, I might say, hava ha rabbanan, that both of these, right, are the views of the rabbis, okay, who dispute with Rabbi Shimon. Okay?
Kasha.
Velo kasha. Okay? And here this doesn't have to be a problem. Kan ba'emtza, kan minatzad. On the one hand, do you retie the string in the middle? Okay? Or do you tie it on the side? In other words, basically, okay, at a point where it either the top or the bottom connection where it may have snapped, okay? V'ibayat ema, okay? And if you want, again, I'll give another possible answer. Haba emtza. What happens if the string snapped in the middle? Mar savar gazrinan. One master holds that we make a ruling, umar savar lo gazrinan. And the other master holds that we do not make a gzera. We do not make a decree, okay? In other words, the one who holds that we make a decree, you make the decree so that you don't make a regular knot, okay? Right? because if you do that, it's permanent, and therefore it might be over on Shabbos, right? On the other hand, if we don't make a decree, okay, it's not a question of making the knot permanent. Why? Because one would do something temporary, and then after realizing, and therefore you don't need to make the decree, and instead wait till after Shabbos to really repair it and correct it properly. Okay? All right. So now,
Next Mishnah.
okay, we go to the next Mishnah. By the way, the one who says no decree also seems to imply that a permanent knot is not problematic, because they could hold like Rabbi Shimon, okay, or like Rabbi Eliezer, that it's Doche Shabbos. Okay, Matnitin. We now have a totally different Mishnah dealing with a different subject. However, remember, since we touched on the topic of utensils repair in the Beis Hamikdash, okay, as let's say opposed to in the countryside, we come to a similar kind of issue here. Okay, Chot Matnitin, our Mishnah teaches as follows: Chotchin yabelet b'mikdash. Let's assume that either the Kohen himself has some kind of a wart, or the animal for which is going to be the korban has a wart. Okay? Says the Mishnah that one may actually remove, cut, sever the wart in the temple precinct, avalo b'medina, but not in the countryside. Ve'im bekli, kan v'kan asur. All right, and if one were to utilize an instrument, okay, some sort of a utensil, both in the Beis Hamikdash precinct and in the countryside, it would be prohibited. Gemara. However, we're going to bring a Braita, right? And the Braita is going to bring a contradiction. Or minhu, says the Braita. What about the following? Okay. Harkivu v'haviu michutz l'tchum. Okay. Let's say in this case, okay, what are we dealing with, right? We're dealing with the Paschal lamb sacrifice, okay? And let's say it's on Shabbat, at the same time that you have to bring the Paschal lamb sacrifice, and there is a wart on the animal, okay? So this Mishnah says, "V'heve'oto michutz l'tchum," and you've brought this animal from outside the Shabbos tchum. V'chatichat yivalto ein dochin, and according to this, the cutting off of the wart does not override the Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer omer dochin. According to Rabbi Eliezer, it does override the Shabbos, right? Because its importance is that it's preparations for Shabbat, okay, but it's preparations for the Yom Tov as well, which have to be done on Shabbat, okay? Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina, Chad Amar, according to one, Havaha bilacha v'lo bekashya, okay? Okay, that this depends, the two of them say it depends on whether the wart is a moist wart, okay, or whether it's a dry wart, okay? The dry is different. Look at Art Scroll note number 15 on 103A2, and it explains it, that whether one, in that case, it may be easier to remove it when it's dry than when it's wet, okay? Even without the use of an instrument. Furthermore, kan biyad, kan bekli. It also may depend if one is able to remove it by hand, okay? All right? Versus, let's say, having to need a utensil, right? With a utensil, having to remove it may be more difficult, and therefore it may be considered work. V'chad amar hava habiyad, and one of them said, in both cases it had to do with removal by hand. V'lo kasha ha bilacha ha b'yavesha. And not a problem. In one hand, on the one case, it's where the wart is moist, in the other where it's dry. And going on, Ulaman da'amar ha-biyad ha-bikli, and according to the one who said it depends on whether one removes it by hand or by a utensil, ma'itama lo amar ha-bilacha ha-biyavesha, what's the reason that he did not distinguish between a wet wart and a dry one? Amarlach, he would tell you the following. In other words, this would be his answer. Yavesha afilu bakol nami shari. Okay, that the dry wart would be easy. Okay, everybody would be agreement that it can be removed, and it's permissible. Ma'itama, what's the reasoning? If ruche ifrecha. Okay, that it disintegrates, it crumbles on its own once it's removed. Okay, so it's easy to take off, whether on the animal or on the kohen. Laman damar ha belacha v'ha biyavisha. But according to the one who says it depends on whether the wart itself is moist or dry, ma'itama lo amar ha biyad ha bikli. What's the reason that he didn't give the answer of using one's hand or using the utensil? Amarlach, he said he would tell us and answer the following. Bikli, if we're talking about using a utensil. Hatnan, here isn't the following taught, im bikli kan v'kan asur, that with any kind of utensil, whether here or here, namely in the temple precinct or in the countryside, it's forbidden. V'ida, and the other one, hadikatani hatam, his answer would be, here, since it's taught there in the example, mishum dekabae ifluge, right? Namely, that since they wanted to teach about the machloket of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan, that's why he brings this example as well. The idach dumya, and the other would say, no, that's comparable. The hikivu, v'hiviu michutz l'tchum katani. Why? That's comparable. Our situation is comparable to the other Mishnah about the Paschal lamb being brought on Shabbat from beyond the tchum. And it was taught there, the Rabbanan, taught by the rabbis. Ve'idach, and the other one, okay, who's going to argue again, Hekivo delo Rabbi Natan, right? There, in that case, we're going to say that it's not like the example of Rabbi Natan. The Amar Hachayno se et atzmo, who argues that the living animal needs to be able to carry itself. Hava'ato michutz l'tchum, and the fact that he had to bring it from outside the tchum, right? In that particular case, it disagrees with Rabbi Nasa, right? And what are we saying here? Namely, that, right, that basically, right, Rabbi Akiva, and it also disagrees with Rabbi Akiva, the Amar Tchumim Doraita, who holds that Tchumim are Torah mandated laws and not rabbinic. So in other words, in that case, that's why he argues that the parallel with the Mishnah of Psachim on Shabbos doesn't apply. Now, Meitiv Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef, however, has to come and attempt to give okay, a different explanation. Okay? And he says as follows. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. According to the view of Rabbi Eliezer, Kal v'chomer. We have a Kal v'chomer argument here. Namely, if we take the example of the Paschal lamb being brought from beyond the Tchum on Shabbat for Pesach, Uma shchita shehi mishum melacha, dochet ha-Shabbat, whereas the slaughter of this animal, okay, is to be able to have it for Korban Pesach is going to be Doche Shabbos, right? Okay. Ella Shemishum Shvut, but rather in a case of simply rabbinic prohibition, okay, which is what Shvut is, Eino din sheyadchu et ha-Shabbat, is it not logical to say that here, if it's able to overcome a Torah mandated prohibition, okay, for the fulfillment of Pesach sacrifice, then certainly it should fulfill, okay, and override Shabbat for a rabbinic prohibition. Excuse me. Ela Amar Rav Yosef. But rather, Rav Yosef now says the following, a different explanation. Ha vaha biyad. In both cases, we're talking about removal of the wart by hand. Okay? Not only that, but it's also going to be the kind that is, all right, is moist. Ushvut mikdash b'mikdash hitiru. And when we're talking about rabbinic prohibitions in the temple precinct, there we know that that did not apply, and therefore it's permitted. Shvut b'mikdash b'medina. But if you say, what about rabbinic prohibitions applying to the temple, but switch the location to the countryside, that was not acceptable, to override rabbinic prohibitions that were capable of being overridden in the temple, but are not capable of being overridden in the countryside, and therefore lo hitiru. Therefore, they did not permit that. Okay. Now, going on further, Yativ Abaye v'kamar laha shma'ata. Abaye was sitting, and he was reviewing, he was repeating this lesson of Rav Yosef. What happens? V'ka'amar la, right, shmata, etive Rav Safra la Abaye. And Rav Safra comes and he challenges Abaye, okay, with the following. And this is going to sound familiar. Haya kore b'sefer al ha'askupa. If one was reading a sefer, in other words, a scroll, a holy book, okay, and what happened, and he was doing so on the threshold, v'nit galgel ha-sefer miyado, and the book, the scroll rolled out of his hand, golelo atzlo, he may roll it up to himself, okay? So in other words, according to Rav Safra, okay, we have a situation here where the Gemara is going to tell us, the hacha, here in this case, the shvut de mikdash b'medinahu. This is an example where there's a rabbinic prohibition, okay, in the mikdash, which is overridden, but now we're talking about it in the Medina, in the countryside. And yet the text said that he could still roll it to himself. Velo gazrinan, and we don't make a decree, dilma nafil va'ate la'atuye. Okay, we make no decree prohibiting him from rolling it. Why? Lest it roll totally out of his hands and somebody come pick it up and carry it in. Okay? From the Rishus Rabbi. Furthermore, v'lo okimna ba'as kupa karmelit, and we did not establish this threshold as a karmelit. V'rishut rabim overet lefaneha, and we also said that it had a public domain in front of it. So he says, so don't tell me we don't have situations, Rav Safra is saying to Abai, okay, where we have rabbinic prohibitions that are overridden in the temple precinct, okay, and you claim then that they still apply in the Medina, but we here have an example where that's not the case. Okay, so Abaye's answer would be the kevan de igdo biado. Says, no, that's only so long as he's still holding it in his hand, Abaye argues. Afilu shvut nami leka, because in that case, we're saying that there is even no rabbinic prohibition, okay, in this example. Ative. Okay, so fine, right? So now we'll challenge again Rav Safra to Abaye. I'll challenge him with the following. Mishal shalin et ha-pesach letanur im chashecha. That it's permissible, okay, in this case, okay, to lower the slaughtered korban pesach into the oven for its roasting. Vahahacha deshvut de mikdash b'Medina. And here again we have another case of prohibited rabbinic practice, okay, that's overridden in the temple, but now we're talking about something in the countryside. V'lo gazrinan shema yechta b'gachalim. And we don't make a decree that says that we prohibit doing this lest the people stir the coals, okay, to hasten the cooking of the Korban Pesach.
Right. That's us.
Okay, which of course is asur. So Gemara tells us Ishtik. Abaye was silent. He didn't have an answer. Now, Ki ata lakame de Rav Yosef, when Abaye came back and told Rav Yosef what Rav Safra, how he had challenged him, Rav Yosef responds to Abaye, Amarle, Hachi Amarli Rav Safra. In other words, Abaye told him, this is what Rav Safra said to me, etc., etc. So Rav Yosef responds, Amarle, and he says to him, Mai tama lo tishnaile? What's the reason that you didn't answer him? All right, with the following. B'nei chavura zrizin, that the people who are part of the group that have signed up together to share the Korban Pesach are quick. In other words, they are careful and they are quick not to violate the laws. Right? So the answer is, says the Gemara, v'Abaye, and according to Abaye, Kohanim zrizin hein amrinan. We can say that the Kohanim in the temple themselves are careful and quick to be sure to fulfill the laws. That's regarding one thing. B'nei chavura zrizin hein lo amrinan. But to say that the people who are signed up together as a group to eat the Korban Pesach, that they are careful not to violate the laws in their quickness, that Abaye was not prepared to say. Okay. Now, Gemara continues. Right? Rava Amar. So now Rava tries again to bring up a way of answering the contradiction between the Mishnayot. Rabbi Eliezer, it's the view of Rabbi Eliezer, okay, our Mishnah. Why? The Amar machshirei mitzvah dochinet haShabbat, because he holds that utensils, okay, that are necessary for the preparation of the mitzvah on Shabbat can override the Shabbat. Right? Umode Rabbi Eliezer, the kama de efshar l'shnuye mishaninen. But Rabbi Eliezer also acknowledges, okay, that the more the possibility is to do it derech shinui, in a different manner, okay, in order to do a change, that we should make such a change.
Use his elbow.
Right? Right. Whatever. In other words, that here it could be that for the case of Psachim, okay, they did it in a different manner. So Gemara picks up, Maihi, okay, what was the source for Rava's statement that the derech shinui, okay, has to be changed, right, to avoid the possibility here of a over on a Torah mandated practice. The Tanya, as we're taught in the following Braita, right, namely, Kohen she'alta bo yavelet, that if the Kohen himself, okay, has this wart on his body, right, Chavero chotchalo b'shinav. A little disgusting for me. His friend may cut it off for him with his teeth. All right, so the Gemara asks, b'shinav, in, b'kli lo, with his teeth, yes, and with an instrument, no? Okay, I read that as a question. That's how Koren had it, as opposed to Art Scroll with a statement. Chavero en ihulo, his colleague, yes, himself, no? Again, there clearly a question. Mani, according to whom is that? Okay. Ilema Rabbanan uba mikdash. If we say it's in regards to the view of the rabbis and we're talking in the temple precinct. Kevan da Amre Rabbanan. Okay. Once we say, all right, that it is according to the views of the rabbis, Ba'alma Mishum Shvut, then if that's the case, right, if we're talking about a rabbinic prohibition, okay, in general, regarding the Mikdash, Hacha, Mali Hava, Mali Chavero, okay, or Mali Hu, Mali Chavero. Then what difference does it make whether he's the one who removes it or his colleague removes it? Okay, Elelav Rabbi Eliezer. Therefore, it must be that we have to assume that it's Rabbi Eliezer. The Amar Ba'alma Chayav Chatat, okay, who would say that in general, if the person bites it off, okay, he is Chayav Chatas. V'hacha, and here, Afal Gav de Machshirei Mitzvah Dochinet HaShabbat, even though Rabbi Eliezer holds that Machshirei Mitzvah, that items that for mitzvah preparation override Shabbos, Kama de Efshar L'Shnui Mishaninen. The more that it's possible to do it in an alternative manner, okay, to change the mode, one must make the change. So the Gemara comes back. Lo le'olam Rabbanan. Okay? No, what we're saying is no, that our text follows the view of the rabbis. Okay? The brightest follows the rabbis. Ve'i alta bekreso. And if the wart developed on his abdomen. Hachanami. But the Gemara continues. B'mayas Kenan. Here too, then, what are we talking about? Right? Kigon she'altalo nishicha b'gabo. Or let's say maybe, okay, that this Bright is dealing with a situation, okay, that the wart, okay, was located in a different location, namely on the back, on his back, uba'atzilei yadav, or on his elbows, namely the ihu lo matzi shakila, where he himself, okay, the Kohen, is not capable of being able to remove it. Ve'i Rabbanan, and if we're talking about the rabbis, as the state author of the Braita, Nashkile Nahale Biyad. Okay, so let him go ahead and remove it by hand. V'tifshot the Rabbi Eliezer, and that way it also will satisfy the view of Rabbi Eliezer as well. The Amar Rabbi Eliezer, or Rabbi Elazar, as Rabbi Elazar says, Machloket biyad, there is a machloket, a difference opinion regarding one's hand. Aval bekli, but with a kli, divrei hakol chayav. Everyone is in agreement that that would be problematic and be chayav chatas. So Gemara continues. Ula ta'amech, and according to your line of reasoning, okay, according to that position, you're saying, according to the view of also satisfying the statement of Rabbi Eliezer, the Rabbi Eliezer, nami lishkale nihale biyad, let him also go ahead and remove it by hand. Hi, my. Okay, so we ask, how is that? What kind of a comparison? How is that possible? I amrat b'shlema Rabbi Eliezer. If you're going to say that it's acceptable to Rabbi Eliezer, right? Hold on a second. Rabbi Eliezer, hainu degazar yad atu kli. In that case, all right, we might have a situation where Rabbi Eliezer might argue and say we need to make a decree not to use one's hand, lest one use a utensil. Ela'i amrat rabbanan. Okay, but if you're going to say the Braita follows the view of the rabbis, nishkale nehale biyad. Okay, let him proceed and remove it by hand.
Right.
Two, lo midi, and we need not discuss this or present this any further. Okay, there's nothing more to say about it. Okay, now we go on with our new Mishnah. Since we were talking about a item, okay, I don't want to call it a wound per se, but a physical item that might impact the Kohen and his performance, or likewise the sacrifice and its service. Mishnah now continues with a further example, okay, of this kind of a situation, particularly for the Kohen. Okay? Excuse me. Matnitin. Here's our Mishnah. Kohen shelaka be'etzba'o. A Kohen who, let's say, injured or wounded his finger. Okay. Now, remember, as we're going to continue with this Mishnah, okay, what can he do? Korech alei gami b'mikdash, says the Mishnah. He may wrap around the finger a piece of reed when he is in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple precinct. Aval lo b'medina, but not in the countryside. Now, im lahotzi dam, if he injured his finger or wounded his finger for the purpose of bloodletting. In other words, there was remember we've learned all along that they thought that was a means of a cure, like leeches or like other things, right? Kan v'kan asur, both in the temple precinct and in the countryside, it's forbidden. So, continue with our Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda Bered Rabbi Chia. Says as follows: Lo shanu elegami. Okay, we only taught this in regards to the supposed permissible use of the reed. Aval tziltzul katan, but a small sash or a small piece of cloth. Okay, right? ArtScroll wants to translate it belt, but I think sash here gives us a better picture. Okay.
What about a Band-Aid? A Band-Aid would...
No, I think good question. Let's hold off on that just for a moment, all right? Okay. Have yitur begadim. That would be what I'm going to call an extraneous garment. Okay? In other words, the Kohanim were expected to wear certain number of garments, right? So if you put a sash on his hand, okay, we're talking about, remember in olden times, we saw before a wound, they would put some sort of dressing on it, okay? The Rabbi Yochanan Amar, he says, Lo omru yitur begadim, ela b'makom begadim. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, they only made this prohibition of this sash where it was put on where there were other, I'll call it priestly garments, priestly vestments. Aval shelo b'makom begadim, if he had to put it on a part of his body that was not a common priestly garment, lo have yitur begadim, then it would not be considered addition to the priestly garments. V'tepukle mishum chatzitza. So now the Gemara says, well, wait a second. Maybe we have a problem here because it becomes a chatzitza, an interposition between his hand and his having to hold, let's say, the bowl, if he's the Kohen, to catch the blood, okay, or to carry the bowl, okay, after it's been caught and brought for the zrika, for the spritzing of the blood, okay. Bismol, well, maybe the wound occurred on his left hand, okay, because the Kohen had to carry out his priestly functions using his right hand. Inami biyamin, or perhaps also we say it could have been on the right hand. V'shelo b'makom avoda, okay, and not in a situation where he would be coming in contact with the utensils or instruments that were part of the avoda, part of the service. For example, if it hit the back of his hand, okay, let's say something like that. Upliga de Rabba, okay, and the Gemara points out that Rava has a disagreement. The Amar Rava, who says Amar Rav Chisda, in the name of Rav Chisda, B'makom begadim, okay, if we're talking about the place where the garments are worn, afilu nema achat chotzetzet, even something as small as a hairbreadth, okay, would be a interposition. shelo b'makom begadim. And if it's not in the place where the priestly vestments are worn, shalosh al shalosh chotzatzot, a piece of cloth that is 3 by 3, okay? 3 by 3, okay? All right, so we're talking something that's, let's say, less than the width of adult male's knuckles, okay? All right, something like that. Chotzotzot, that is an interposition, right? Pachot mishlosh al shlosh, if it's less than the 3 by 3, einan chotzotzot. It is not considered as something that interposes. Now, ad Rabbi Yochanan, and this challenges Rabbi Yochanan, Vadai pliga ad Rabbi Yehuda berei the Rabbi Chia. Okay, right?
Really?
Then that this also, as it disagrees with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia. Right? Lo shanu elanami, okay, elegami. That where there it said that they only taught it in regards to the use of the reed, about siltzul katan, where they also said that a small scarf or a small sash, okay, chotzetz, is also considered something that interposes. But Rabbi Yochanan Amar, says Rabbi Yochanan, lo amru chatzitza v'pachot mishalosh al shalosh, that they didn't say it would interpose unless, okay, regarding something that was smaller than 3 by 3. Ela b'makom begadim, again, except if it were applied to a place where the priestly vestments were normally worn. Okay? Aval shelo b'makom begadim, right? Where it's not where the priestly vestments are normally worn. Shalosh al shalosh chotzotzot. 3 by 3 does form an interposition. In other words, it's inappropriate, it's illegal. Pachot mishalosh, if it's less than 3, ein chotzotzot. It's less than 3, they do not. Okay, it's not considered the yitur, a forbidden addition to priestly garments. Vahainu derava, and this then is the message, the effect that Rava was saying, Amar Rava, in the name of Rav Chisda. Now, the Gemara wants to continue up, and we're going to just go up to the Mishnah. Lema pliga de Rav Yehuda berei de Rabbi Chia. Shall we say then that Rava then is only disagreeing with Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia? Shani tziltzul katan de chashiv. Why? Because perhaps he's saying that this small sash is unique because it's significant. Okay? It's still considered a garment. Okay? And something that could be inappropriate addition to the priestly vestments. Rabbi Yochanan, and according to the view of Rabbi Yochanan, okay, the Ashma'inan Gami, okay, who teaches us that this use of the reed is permitted. Lishma'inan Silsul Katan Milta Agav Orche Kamash Malan. Okay, and that according to Rabbi Yochanan, what it comes to teach us in terms of this small sash is that it comes by the way of an additional learning, okay? A side benefit of learning. And this is what it comes to teach us, Degami Mase, that the putting of the reed can also cure the wound, okay? and yet it's still permitted to be done by the Kohen, so long as it's only done in the Beis Hamikdash, in the precinct of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Okay, at this point, and tomorrow, encourage everybody to learn what they can. Right. And then we'll pick up. I'm looking to see. All right, we'll pick up a certain at a certain point with this Mishnah, and then we'll finish up to a point. Okay,
Yeah, on
Sunday morning.
Sunday's only half a daf, right?
Sunday is a short piece, so
Short piece.
you can have a fancy breakfast then.
Okay. Okay. Who do we send the bill to, Rabbi?
Not me, of course. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. Stay well.
Have a
Have
good
a
Hey,
good
thank you.
Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Monica,
Yep.
it's 20 after 9.
Good. I'm coming right now. Who rang the bell so nicely?
Sally,
Oh, she gets the
she's
mitzvah.
cooking it for this month.
She gets the